If you're finding that your high ticket sales have stalled or starting to decline, there's definitely a quick little checklist that I have everybody walk through before they make any big decisions. Now, I'll tell you a quick little funny story. So years ago, I was in dentistry, had about 110 gold inner circle members paying $1,000 a month, which, that was big money back then. And the fact of the matter is the way that business was running, it was something that was like a dream business, right? And then I had my silver members, and then and what I noticed was at my live events, I started seeing that my percentage of sales to the back of the room of our live events were becoming less and less, like our percentage of the room buying. And there's a couple of reasons for that, but one of the big reasons was that it was the same message to largely a lot of the same audience, and I had to think of different ways to solve the problem. Now, I'll tell you about how I solved the problem at the end of this video. But one of the first things that I like asking people to do is if you're finding yourself having stalled or declining sales at your event, first thing I want to do is let's go back to just the data first of all. Like, before we make any judgments, before we talk about the economy, before we talk about you've been in the market so many years, before we talk about the message, what's the data telling us? And so when you look at your last 90 days, 6 months, are the numbers the same from the previous timelines that you're comparing to? That's one of the first things that you want to do. And you can do this year over year, and you want to look at, like, what was the cost per lead? What was the cost per sale of people coming to the event and attending? Now, the second thing is that of the buying units in the room, which I don't like talking about people as units, but the fact of the matter is as the buying customers in the room that would be potentially into your mastermind or into your coaching club. And you can take this as, hey, Ed, we did a live event, or this could also just be, hey, we ran a virtual workshop and we're used to closing X%, and we just didn't make as much money. So when we break down all the numbers and we look across the numbers, one of the things you want to look at right away is, like, has there been a change in the cost per lead, cost per sale, and the overall conversion numbers from jumping in the event and then moving into the event, into your mastermind, virtual or in person, okay? So once we lay that out, let's just assume the numbers are similar. You'll probably find that there's a few, like, gaping red lights, or things that you'd like, yeah, our cost per lead is twice as high, which that to me goes to, okay, let's look at your message and look at your audience that we're targeting and look at the medium. So those are three different things that, like, we would diagnose with right out of the gate. But the other thing that I said to one of my clients who sells a $65,000 coaching program this year was, look, man, heading into 2024, you have to be generating 3 to 4 times the amount of leads in some markets. Their market specifically, which I'm not going to give it away right now, is in order to maintain or continue to grow your coaching club. Reason being is that with inflation or with, chaotic economic times, you're going to have some people that will pull the trigger like normal, but most people are just going to be a little bit more secure with making a good decision on their future, right? Which we can overcome those problems, but one simple way to solve that is you accelerate the amount of leads you're driving into your business, and you open up more doorways for people to buy, okay? Now, what might that look like, Ed? Well, let's just say, for example, your past process. So I have 3 big things to look at. One was, how have you been getting them to date, and how are my numbers? Number 2 is, now we look at your process, right? Has your process evolved or changed over the past 3 years? And if the answer to that is like, well, no, Ed, we have a simple process. We generate a lead, we get on the phone, we try and sell them, and if they don't buy, we just follow up with them forever. Well, hey, we're heading towards 2024 right now. There's a lot of like different ways to convert prospects into clients. And if the one thing your business is relying on is just like one main medium or channel, like, let's say it's email, or podcasts, or Facebook or Instagram, LinkedIn, if you're only relying on one core thing, it's time for you to start diversifying your message. And one solution for you just might be like, how do we get 10 times the amount of content across all those platforms so we have more lines in the water to bring more fish into the boat that then we can, you know, like cook with, right? So to speak. But if you're only doing the same old stuff and you're like sitting there being like, well, why aren't my conversion rates higher, or my revenue? Let's ignore conversion rates. Let's look at revenue, because I'll tell you, conversion rates are probably going to be lower unless you're selling like a biz opposite like new thing, which we'll talk about that in a moment. You're setting yourself up for failure, right? And so where I like looking at when I'm brought in to look at teams or looking at businesses is normally it's like, well, who's in charge of all your traffic and your conversion? And usually it's some sort of like hybrid between an agency on the outside and an internal team. And then what I start looking at is the process that we've been closing, and is there any low-hanging fruit that we're just completely missing? Now, I can tell you that most experts are not pre-selling strong enough with content. YouTube videos, podcasts, free content before you get to a sales thing. And you could be spending $1 a day across multiple platforms to do this. This is not rocket science, and it's not overly complicated. But most agencies, and I'm not trying to pick on agencies, some I love, some I don't, is that's extra work for them. So you need to be really, really clear on, hey, we need to be doing these kind of halo effect strategies to make you, the expert, omnipresent, to steal what's his name's thing. And welcome to Chicago. We have sirens all the time, so can't ignore those sirens, you know, God bless them. But one of the things we'll do is we'll look at the process, and then with that process, whether you're going lead to webinar or lead to free workshop or lead to challenge or lead to whatever it might be, a phone call, there's usually some really low-hanging fruit ways just in the messaging, which brings me to my next point. The reason why I always look at it is like, well, if buyers are not buying the higher priced item, I like going back to the first click on the ad and saying, what was the message that we brought the buyers in on? And some people do this, some people don't. And the reason is because you're going to notice that when people come in with buyer intent, if we can get them an immediate, quick result of some kind, they are 100% more likely to upgrade to your mastermind or higher level program if they've already experienced any kind of result. This result might be as simple as they got a phone call to the office from a patient. They sent out 10 text messages to clients, and all of a sudden 3 want to work with them. They didn't close them yet, but they got 3 hand raisers. That is a result, right? Results in advance, but more importantly, results in advance that actually open up a doorway to where the client needs you even more. That is a totally different conversation than come to my live training, I'm going to educate you for 2 days, and then I'm going to tell you about how great my coaching club is. Over-education occurs in that scenario when somebody does not walk in with a pre-result, with a feeling that they're already a part of your tribe, they're already a part of your system, they know it works, they believe it works, they trust it works, and now they're here to get the next level of it so that when they're ready to go to the next level, they already trust you. And so when you bring in coaching to someone like that, they are way more likely to want to work with you on that. The next thing we got to look at is, okay, so we got a result, they're in your group, they're doing your thing or whatever, and you're getting ready to sell. Are you the one selling yourself constantly? And so one of the things that I always did, and something I do now with a lot of my clients, is you need a wingman. Even if you look at the most popular guys, like I always talk about Tony Robbins, is like, you know, I've made kind of a little niche of working with humble experts that really don't like bragging about themselves. And when I say to them, like, well, you know, even the most outgoing experts have other people helping sell their coaching clubs and their highest level stuff, because it allows you as the expert to disassociate all, like, I'm teaching. Oh, boom, I'm flipping into sale. That is it's a hard bridge to sometimes get across, right? So the way we do that is two ways. One is you have someone, like, you know, back in the day, I'll give you an example. Like back in the day, Joseph McClendon, African-American dude, great guy. he would do a lot of setup for Tony Robbins, and you didn't know you were being sold. Like, hey, you got to be in this mastermind, you got to be around a mentor, you got some modeling. Then Tony would come out and teach how to like model, and then the next day or two after, I think it was Unleash the Power Within, they would talk about like, hey, if you're looking for a model, well, Tony's the model, right? That sounds so much better than if Tony was like, hey guys, I told you needed a model, here I am, right? And so then they would sell the Life Mastery, which was their year-long package. But Joseph McClendon was a little bit of a buffer. He was a sidekick pitch person for Tony. And what that allowed Tony to do is that Tony still sold it, but it allowed Joseph to be tougher on the audience. Like, hey, if you like, and so we do it a little differently than that. But you get my point, right? It disassociated the expert from having to also be the salesperson, which if you do it wrong, you build up all this authority for 2 days or a full training or 3 days, whatever it might be. And then you bumble the pitch and now they're like, well, he looks kind of silly up there trying to be salesy and pushy, right? Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, right? Like, but the way you do it is you start building out frameworks. And the frameworks are educational pieces that lead people to wanting to buy. I'll tell you a quick little story and I'll give you an example. So I was giving an example of like my son in golf and how in the last 3.5 years, he's gone from knowing nothing in 8th grade to being a scratch golfer as a senior in high school. And that when he started, he didn't have any preconceived notions. And he met a coach he really liked. We liked him as well. So he was able to implicitly just listen and then model and then follow. And then by listening, modeling, and then following without any bias, he was able to integrate the lessons much faster and very, very quickly his strokes came down, blah, blah, blah. And so then a couple of years went by, his one coach had to move away, blah, blah, blah. A couple of years went by and he done some lessons with different coaches. But what I noticed was that every time I'd ask him questions about it, he'd have like a caveat to the lesson. Like, well, yeah, he was teaching this, but, and then he would give me his own interpretation and like he would change it. And I just know that as a high performer, unless you're modeling somebody implicitly, which means verbatim until you get mastery, you're never going to achieve your results as quickly. And just think about like your students, right? Aren't I right? Like, look at your students right now. Like, if they're trying to learn from you and 4 other people all at the same time, they'll never be able to succeed at the speed at which somebody's just like, hey, listen, Ed, tell me exactly what to do. I'm going to follow it to the T, right? Now, I share that story for 2 reasons. One, that is just true, right? If you have a blank slate model, and if you have a blank slate and you have a model that's already mastered something, the closer I can get to that model, which is why I would want to be in the coaching club, right? And then number 2 is the more I can just model his system will get me my result much faster. What's that result? Well, it could be buying your dream house. It could be buying, paying for all your debt. It could be acquiring your first business deal. It could be acquiring your first profitable, real estate deal. It could be, getting a certain type of client or patient into your business. Like whatever those things might be, do you see how transferable over that one story is over to every single one of us? We can relate to it, right? It could be raising kids properly, right? Do not have a model for someone to follow. Like, so everyone needs a model. We know that, right? Now, this is a framework I teach when I work with my clients. I'll say, hey, look at, so I'll do a whole story on this, right? But I'll tell that story and I'll say, listen, you are in a room of greatness. You have a model that has been proven. Now, let me ask a question. If I was able to give you a model that has been able to build a business of 1 million, 3 million, 6 million, 10 million, acquire 30 million worth of deals, whatever that might be that you can offer your client, and we were able to give you the exact steps and frameworks, how many of you believe that it would be worth at least $250,000 to you? If it, and we could show you exactly how this would lead to 5 million, 10 million, allowing you to retire quicker. Like, is it worth $250,000 to you? Is it worth $500,000? I mean, how many and then all of a sudden you start getting this buy-in of like, they're like, yeah. I mean, this is definitely worth it. Because it's not about how much it costs, right? It's not a cost framework. It's what is this worth to you if we were able to add 100, 200, 300,000 this year, and then you get to keep that new system for 20, 25, 30 years, or apply it across multiple business profit centers. Are you seeing when I step back, do you guys see how powerful that is? So later today, when Expert gets on stage and he talks about his inner circle, because I've already asked him about it. He's only got 18 spots. I'm looking out in the audience. There's 105 of you here, okay? Here's what I would do if I were you. I would be going back. I would be asking how I can get to the front of that line to make sure that you guarantee that you have the right model and you are one of those 18 people, in some kind of framework like that. And so anyhow, so what I would ask is with all my clients, I kind of audit their last event. I'll say well, when did you pitch this? How did you pitch it? What was before it? What was 24 hours before it? What was 36 hours before it? What result happened before they even got to the event, right? Virtual and or in person. You see where I'm going with this? And so I'm a big believer that 50%, if not 80% of the sale into your higher ticket thing should happen before they get onto your transformational mechanism, okay? And so, that's usually an indicator of if you're seeing lagging sales, that could be one big chunk that's missing. Now, one more last bonus I'll give you, and then we're gonna wrap this video up, is that sometimes I would ask you is can you start niching? And this is what I did in dentistry. Can you start sub-niching and adding sub-niches within your business? Because I can tell you about 2 businesses that I'm advising right now that they've taken their core target demographic and they've added an element that was not in their core offer before. And they started leading with that new element. And all of a sudden, they're pulling new, fresh leads into their business and taking their existing leads and past clients and revitalizing their excitement. What I did was, when I was in dentistry, we started noticing that a lot of our testimonials were coming from dental implant doctors. And I said, well, what if we created something just for dental implant doctors? And then all of a sudden, man, I saw an explosion in my business that literally tripled our profit in less than 30 days. And the reason being is because I was able to find a result that I could get them really, really quickly in a very profitable market in their business. And then I had the tools to help them immediately. And so once we started doing that, all of a sudden I was able to revitalize our coaching club. So in summary of this entire video, I hope you've really enjoyed it, is there's probably 4 core things I just mentioned, maybe 5 actually, but 1, look at your data. What's your data telling you? Do you need to get more lead flow? And in what did I say earlier? In crazy economic times, you need to get more leads in your system. 2, review your process, right? Have you evolved with the change, with the changes in what's available and across multiple mediums? If you haven't, well, it's kind of on you why you're not getting the results that you desire, okay? Spending bad money after a funnel that's old is poor thinking, okay? And expecting something to be changed. They say that's insanity, right? And number 3 is, are you the one selling yourself all the time? If you are, it's time to mix it up. Get a different voice in there. I mean, you may be actually regressing and not selling as effectively because you're bored of yourself listening to yourself pitch and you're embarrassed, I'm uncomfortable selling. I don't want to be selling. I got all these inner circle guys here. Well, there's ways to fix that, okay? So, you can reach out to me, Eddie at EdO'KeefeLive.com, private message us. We will help you with that. We have a whole wingman, pitchman program that solves that for you, okay? And then number 5, can you niche up or down in your business where we go broader or we go tighter? And both of those work, okay? Last thing I want to tell you about is if you are looking to add an extra 100K in a day to your business and do one-to-many selling using virtual workshops, definitely go to my website, EdO'KeefeLive.com, and definitely click on the button that says, free workshop, or take our 5-day challenge where I'll walk you through the entire system on how to build a machine that pumps out more clients in a day than you currently are doing all month, okay? And then from there, you'll see my system, my process, and you'll be able to tell really, really quickly if I can come in and actually revitalize all your sales, get your numbers back up where they're supposed to be, and get you feeling confident again. Like, look, we're still in action. Maybe our numbers dipped a little bit. That happens sometimes. Change does happen, but you can evolve and overcome that with just a few new resources, maybe a new way of thinking, and get your business back up to the next level. So it's Ed O'Keefe. Thanks so much for watching this. Make sure you click subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great one. Bye.